Seeds of Determination. Introduction to the protagonist. Marcus Thompson was no ordinary farmer. He stood tall, with calloused hands and a kind yet determined gaze that spoke volumes about his journey. Marcus came from a lineage of hard-working farmers who had toiled over their land for generations, overcoming countless adversities. The Thompson family farm, nestled in the heart of rural Georgia, was more than just soil and crops. It was a symbol of perseverance, survival, and hope. His grandparents had purchased the land during the tail end of Reconstruction, pouring every ounce of their savings into it. Over the years, the farm weathered storms, both literal and metaphorical. From economic downturns to racial injustices, the Thompsons clung to their piece of earth, determined not to let their dreams slip away. Marcus had inherited this indomitable spirit, but he wasn't content with merely holding on to the land. He dreamed of turning it into a beacon of success and innovation. As a child, Marcus spent countless hours helping his father in the fields. Though the work was grueling, he absorbed invaluable lessons about resilience and resourcefulness. By the time he was in his late teens, Marcus had begun to think beyond traditional farming methods. He pursued a degree in agricultural science, where he learned about sustainable farming and advanced technologies. When he returned to the farm, he brought with him a fresh perspective and a burning desire to make the family legacy thrive. Marcus embraced techniques such as crop rotation, vertical farming, and the use of drones for crop monitoring. His adoption of solar-powered irrigation systems not only increased efficiency but also reduced the farm's carbon footprint. Within a decade, Marcus had transformed his family's modest farmland into a thriving agricultural enterprise. He expanded operations to include export partnerships, selling organic produce to markets across the United States and Europe. The need for a private jet. With success came new challenges. Marcus found himself traveling frequently to meet investors, secure contracts, and attend agricultural expos. The logistics of these trips were grueling, connecting flights, long layovers, and delays ate into valuable time he could spend managing his business or innovating further. One evening, after yet another delayed flight, Marcus sat in his modest but comfortable home office. He was reviewing the contracts of a new export deal that required him to be in multiple countries within short timeframes. Frustrated by the inefficiencies of commercial travel, he began to entertain an idea that had seemed far-fetched just months before. A private jet. At first, the notion felt extravagant. However, as Marcus calculated the potential savings in time and productivity, the idea began to make sense. Owning a private jet would not only allow him to travel seamlessly but also position him as a serious player in the international market. It wasn't about luxury, it was about efficiency and reinvestment into his growing empire. Determined to make this a reality, Marcus researched aviation options, consulting with industry experts and financial advisors. He identified a high-end aviation dealership known for its premium selection and impeccable service. Confident in his decision, Marcus set an appointment for the following week, ready to take the next step in his journey. Arriving at the elite aviation dealer. The day finally arrived. Marcus dressed simply, as he always did, in his signature overalls and work boots. He believed in staying true to his roots, no matter how far he climbed. With his financial documents neatly organized in a leather folder, he made the drive to the dealership. The showroom was an architectural marvel, a sleek, glass-enclosed building that gleamed in the sunlight. Inside, jets of various sizes and designs sat on display, their pristine surfaces reflecting the luxury they promised. The air was thick with the scent of polished leather and freshly brewed coffee, catering to the elite clientele the dealership typically served. Marcus stepped inside, his boots clicking against the polished marble floor. Conversations faltered, and heads turned as he made his way to the reception desk. The room seemed to quiet momentarily, as if the sight of a black man in overalls had disrupted the unspoken norms of the space. "Good afternoon," Marcus said politely to the receptionist, a young woman dressed impeccably in a tailored blazer. She looked up, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second before she regained composure. "Good afternoon. How can I assist you?" I'm here to meet with one of your sales representatives. I have an appointment to discuss purchasing a jet, Marcus replied, his tone steady and confident. The receptionist blinked, clearly taken aback. Oh, of course. One moment, please, she said, picking up the phone and murmuring something to the person on the other end. As Marcus waited, he couldn't help but notice the subtle reactions of the other customers and staff in the showroom. A middle-aged couple whispered to each other, occasionally glancing in his direction. A sales associate in a tailored suit gave him a once-over, his expression a mix of skepticism and amusement. Marcus remained unbothered, standing tall amidst the unspoken judgments. Moments later, a man in his late 40s approached. His name tag read Greg, manager. He extended a hand, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Mr. Thompson, welcome to our dealership. I'm Greg, the manager here. I understand you're interested in purchasing a jet? That's correct, Marcus replied, shaking Greg's hand firmly. Greg hesitated, his eyes briefly scanning Marcus' attire, before continuing. Well, we have a wide range of options available. Why don't we start with something modest? I'll show you a few of our pre-owned models. Marcus raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He had anticipated this kind of reception. It wasn't the first time he had been underestimated, and it likely wouldn't be the last. As Greg led him toward the back of the showroom, Marcus took a deep breath, silently reminding himself why he was there. This was just another challenge to overcome, a minor detour on the path to fulfilling his vision. Little did Greg or the rest of the staff know, Marcus wasn't just there to buy a jet. He was about to change the narrative entirely. Prejudice takes flight. Encounter with disrespect. As Marcus followed Greg across the sprawling showroom, the atmosphere grew heavier. It wasn't just the sheer size of the space or the grandeur of the jets on display, it was the unspoken tension in the air. Every step Marcus took seemed to draw eyes, and every glance carried judgment. The other customers, all of whom appeared wealthy and polished, whispered among themselves, their curiosity bordering on disdain. Greg led Marcus toward a far corner of the showroom where older, smaller jets sat in stark contrast to the sleek, modern models displayed near the entrance. The manager's pace was brisk, almost as if he were eager to finish the interaction and return to more appropriate clients. These here are some of our pre-owned options, Greg said, gesturing toward the lineup of jets. They're reliable and, more importantly, affordable. Marcus raised an eyebrow, catching the emphasis on the last word. It wasn't lost on him that Greg had made an assumption, one that Marcus was all too familiar with. For years, people had underestimated him based on his appearance, his background, and the color of his skin. Today was no different. These models are older, Marcus noted, his tone measured. What about your newer inventory? I'm interested in something state-of-the-art. Greg's smile tightened. Well, the newer models come with a significant price tag. I figured you'd want to explore more practical options first. Marcus folded his arms, his calm demeanor unwavering. I appreciate the thought, but I'd like to see all your options before making a decision. Greg hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. He glanced at Marcus' overalls and boots once more, as if they were some kind of disqualifier for serious wealth. Of course, he said after a pause, though his tone lacked conviction. Let me grab one of our brochures. Subtle racism and microaggressions. As Greg walked off to fetch the brochure, Marcus remained standing near the older jets. A young sales associate nearby, who had been pretending to adjust some papers, couldn't resist making a comment. Shopping for a jet, huh? The associate said, his tone dripping with incredulity. That's ambitious. Marcus turned to face him, meeting his gaze with calm intensity. It is, he replied simply. The associate chuckled nervously. You know, these things require a lot more than just a down payment. Maintenance, fuel, crew, it all adds up. A lot of people don't realize that. Marcus kept his expression neutral. Good thing I've done my homework. The associate blinked, clearly caught off guard by Marcus' confidence. Before he could say anything else, Greg returned with a glossy brochure in hand. "Here you go," Greg said, handing Marcus the brochure. "This highlights some of our newer models, but like I said, they're on the pricier side. I just wanted to make sure you had realistic expectations." Marcus flipped through the brochure, his composure unshaken. He had dealt with worse. The dismissive tone, the veiled doubt, it was all part of a pattern he knew too well. But he wasn't here to prove a point to them. He was here to make a business decision. Marcus' quiet confidence. "I'd like to see the latest models in person," Marcus said, closing the brochure and handing it back to Greg. The manager hesitated again, clearly reluctant. "Are you sure? I mean, these jets are in the multi-million-dollar range. If you're serious about buying, we'd need to discuss financing options, credit checks." Marcus cut him off, his voice calm but firm. "I'm serious about buying, and I'll be paying in full. Now, can we see the latest models, or should I take my business elsewhere?" Greg's jaw tightened, and a faint blush crept up his cheeks. The other staff members, who had been watching the exchange from a distance, quickly averted their gazes. The manager cleared his throat, clearly realizing he had miscalculated. "Of course," Greg said, forcing a smile. "Right this way." As Greg led Marcus toward the section of the showroom reserved for the latest jets, the atmosphere shifted. The newer models gleamed under the showroom lights, their sleek designs and cutting-edge features making them the crown jewels of the dealership. Marcus took his time examining each one, asking detailed questions about fuel efficiency, range, and maintenance. Greg's tone became more respectful as the questions revealed Marcus' deep understanding of aviation and his clear intent to make a purchase. Still, the earlier insults lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Marcus maintained his composure throughout the process. He knew his worth, and he knew the value of his time. Let them underestimate him, he thought. It wouldn't change the outcome. After an hour of examining the jets, Marcus stopped in front of a particularly stunning model, a brand-new Gulfstream G700. Its polished exterior reflected the lights above, and its spacious interior was visible through the open door. "This one," Marcus said, turning to Greg. "I'd like to discuss the details for purchasing this model." Greg blinked, momentarily at a loss for words. The G700 was one of the most expensive jets in the showroom. A symbol of ultimate luxury and status. "The G700? Greg repeated, as if to confirm he had heard correctly. "That's right," Marcus said, his tone steady. The room seemed to hold its breath. Marcus' quiet confidence was unshakable, and for the first time since entering the dealership, Greg and the staff began to realize they had underestimated him. But they had no idea just how much Marcus was about to redefine their assumptions, proving his worth. Unveiling Marcus' success. As Marcus stood beside the sleek Gulfstream G700, Greg hesitated, visibly uncertain about how to proceed. "This model, as I mentioned earlier, is, well, it's one of the most exclusive jets on the market," Greg began cautiously. "Before we move forward, we'd need to verify your financial capacity for a purchase of this magnitude." Marcus nodded calmly. "Of course," he replied, reaching into his leather folder. He handed over a neatly compiled set of documents, including bank statements, business financials, and letters of credit. Greg took the folder, his demeanor still tinged with skepticism, and moved toward a desk to review its contents. The staff nearby leaned in, curious, but feigning disinterest. Greg's expression shifted as he scanned the documents, his eyes widening slightly with every page. By the time he reached the end, he was visibly flustered. "This," Greg stammered, looking up at Marcus. "This is impressive, Mr. Thompson." Marcus simply nodded, allowing the moment to hang in the air. He was used to the disbelief that often followed the revelation of his financial standing. His agricultural empire, built from decades of hard work and innovation, was a story few expected, especially from a black farmer in rural Georgia. Marcus had transformed the family farm into a powerhouse of modern agriculture. With over 5,000 acres of land, he produced everything from organic vegetables to premium grains, all cultivated using state-of-the-art techniques. His investments in vertical farming and hydroponics had allowed him to diversify his operations, while partnerships with international buyers brought in lucrative contracts. The numbers didn't lie, his annual revenue exceeded tens of millions. Marcus' empire wasn't just about wealth, it was about purpose. He reinvested profits into the local community, funding scholarships for aspiring agricultural students and providing resources for struggling farmers. He believed in creating opportunities where none existed, a philosophy that guided every aspect of his business. Greg's eyes darted back to the papers, as if trying to find some flaw or inconsistency. But there was none. Marcus' credentials were airtight, and his wealth undeniable. The manager's reaction. Greg quickly adjusted his demeanor, his earlier condescension replaced by a nervous eagerness to please. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his tone now deferential, "I had no idea. I mean, I didn't realize. Please forgive any misunderstanding earlier. We are absolutely thrilled to assist you with this purchase." The transformation was almost comical. Greg, who had barely hidden his disdain minutes earlier, was now fawning over Marcus like a long-lost friend. The other staff members, sensing the shift, followed suit. The young associate who had made the snide comment about maintenance costs now hovered nearby, ready to assist at a moment's notice. Marcus observed the change in attitude with a mix of amusement and disappointment. He had seen this play out before, the sudden respect that came not from who he was, but from what he had. Their earlier prejudice hadn't disappeared, it had merely been overshadowed by the allure of his wealth. "Well," Marcus said, his voice steady, "I'm glad we're on the same page now. Let's discuss the next steps for purchasing the G700. Greg nodded eagerly, launching into a detailed explanation of the process. Marcus listened attentively, his outward composure masking the mix of emotion simmering beneath the surface. Marcus' internal conflict. As Greg spoke, Marcus' mind wandered to his journey, the struggles, the sacrifices, and the barriers he had faced to reach this point. Growing up as a black farmer in the South had been far from easy. His family had endured systemic discrimination, from unequal access to loans to outright hostility from competitors and local officials. Marcus remembered one particularly harsh winter when his father had been denied a crucial loan, forcing the family to sell a portion of their land to make ends meet. It was a turning point for Marcus, fueling his determination to rise above the obstacles and prove that success was possible, no matter the odds. But even as Marcus achieved success, he realized that wealth didn't erase prejudice. Today's experience at the dealership was proof of that. Despite his accomplishments, he was still judged by his appearance, his background, and the color of his skin. The respect he now commanded from Greg and the staff wasn't genuine, it was transactional, tied to his financial worth rather than his inherent value as a person. Marcus felt a pang of frustration but quickly pushed it aside. He had learned to channel his emotions into action, using every slight and setback as fuel for his ambition. He knew that changing perceptions required more than individual success, it required systemic change. As Greg continued to outline the paperwork, Marcus made a silent vow. This wasn't just about buying a jet, it was about reclaiming the narrative. He would show them, and the world, that success was not limited by race or background. And he wasn't done yet. Little did Greg and his staff know, Marcus had plans that would upend their assumptions in ways they couldn't imagine. Turning the tables. The twist, buying the jet and more. Marcus stood in front of the gleaming Gulfstream G700, its sleek, state-of-the-art design embodying the heights of luxury and efficiency. As Greg finalized the details of the purchase, his excitement grew, believing this sale would be one of the dealership's most significant wins for the quarter. Other staff members hovered discreetly nearby, their attitudes transformed from dismissal to reverence. "I'd like to move forward with the purchase of this jet," Marcus announced, his voice calm but decisive. "Let's expedite the process. Time is money, after all." Greg nodded eagerly, flipping through a clipboard full of forms. "Absolutely, Mr. Thompson. We'll have everything ready for your signature shortly." But Marcus wasn't finished. One more thing, he added, his tone measured. Greg glanced up, a flicker of curiosity crossing his face. Yes? This jet isn't just for convenience or luxury, Marcus began, addressing not just Greg but everyone within earshot. It's a tool to expand my business globally. My goal isn't just profit, it's to empower other farmers, particularly those who've faced the same barriers I have. This jet will allow me to build international partnerships, open new markets for sustainable farming, and provide opportunities for others to thrive. The room was silent as Marcus spoke, his words cutting through the superficiality that had characterized their earlier interactions. For the first time, the staff saw beyond the overalls and the farmer stereotype. Marcus wasn't just buying a jet, he was reshaping the narrative. As the paperwork was prepared, Marcus noticed the subtle unease among the staff. Their earlier prejudice hadn't been forgotten, it lingered in the glances exchanged, in the forced smiles. Marcus wasn't one to let such moments pass unaddressed. When the final documents were brought to him, Marcus reviewed them meticulously, signing with a steady hand. Then, with a calm smile, he turned to Greg. Now that we've finalized the jet purchase, let's talk about the dealership. Greg blinked, confusion evident on his face. The dealership? That's right, Marcus said. In addition to the jet, I've decided to purchase this entire establishment. The silence in the room was deafening. Greg's jaw dropped, and the staff exchanged wide-eyed glances. I'm sorry? Greg stammered. You heard me, Marcus said, his expression unflinching. I've been exploring opportunities to diversify my investments, and your dealership caught my attention. I reached out to your parent company last month to inquire about acquisition terms. They accepted my offer yesterday. Effective immediately, I'm the new owner. Marcus buys the dealership. The weight of Marcus' words settled over the room like a thunderclap. Greg's face turned pale, his earlier confidence evaporating. You're serious? He managed to say. Dead serious, Marcus replied, his tone firm but not unkind. And as the new owner, I intend to make a few changes. The staff's reactions ranged from disbelief to outright panic. Some tried to feign composure, while others struggled to process the sudden shift in power dynamics. Greg, who had spent the day subtly and overtly belittling Marcus, now found himself reporting to him. Marcus turned to the gathered employees, his gaze steady. I want to thank all of you for your service here. This dealership has potential, but it's clear there's room for improvement, starting with the way customers are treated. Greg cleared his throat, his voice shaky. Mr. Thompson, I assure you, we strive to provide the highest level of service. Do you? Marcus interrupted, his tone sharp but controlled. Because from the moment I walked in, I was met with skepticism, condescension, and outright disrespect. You judged me not on my actions or my intentions, but on my appearance and assumptions. That's not just bad business, it's unacceptable. Greg looked as though he wanted to sink into the floor. The other employees stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Confronting prejudice. Marcus took a deep breath, his voice softening. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to create change. This dealership isn't just a business, it's an opportunity to set a new standard. Going forward, every customer who walks through these doors will be treated with respect, regardless of their appearance, background, or perceived status. He paused, letting his words sink in. I'll also be implementing bias training for all employees and hiring a more diverse staff to ensure a culture of inclusivity. And Marcus turned to the manager, who flinched slightly under his gaze. You'll be stepping down as manager effective immediately. I'll find a new role for you, but leadership requires more than sales skills, it requires integrity. Greg nodded, his face flushed with embarrassment. I understand, sir. Marcus addressed the rest of the staff. For those willing to adapt and grow, you'll have a place here. But let me be clear, this dealership will no longer tolerate prejudice in any form. If you can't align with that vision, it's time to part ways. The room was silent, the weight of Marcus' words settling over everyone present. He wasn't just a new owner, he was a force for change, determined to reshape not just the dealership but the culture that had allowed such behavior to persist. A legacy of change. Transforming the business. The transition in ownership sent ripples through the dealership. Marcus wasted no time in setting a new tone. His first official act as owner was to call a staff meeting. Standing at the front of the room, Marcus addressed the team with the same quiet confidence he had displayed throughout his journey. "We are in a new era," Marcus began. "This dealership will no longer operate as it has in the past. From this moment forward, our priority is to ensure every customer feels welcome, respected, and valued, regardless of their background, appearance, or perceived wealth." Marcus laid out a clear vision. He implemented mandatory bias training for all employees, aimed at breaking down prejudices and fostering a culture of empathy. He also reviewed hiring practices, ensuring they were inclusive and equitable. Within months, the dealership's workforce transformed, reflecting a diverse team of professionals who brought fresh perspectives and a shared commitment to fairness. To reinforce the new culture, Marcus instituted a customer code of respect, a set of principles displayed prominently in the showroom. It emphasized equal treatment, active listening, and an unwavering dedication to customer satisfaction. Employees who exemplified these values were publicly recognized and rewarded, creating a positive cycle of accountability and motivation. Under Marcus' leadership, the dealership thrived. Sales surged as word spread about the business's inclusive and welcoming environment. Customers from all walks of life, many of whom had felt excluded by high-end establishments in the past, now flocked to the dealership. Marcus' emphasis on respect and professionalism created a loyal client base and elevated the dealership's reputation within the aviation industry. Inspiring others. Marcus didn't stop at transforming the dealership. He saw his success as an opportunity to uplift others and dismantle systemic barriers. Using his growing platform, Marcus began sharing his story at conferences, schools, and community events. He spoke candidly about his struggles as a Black farmer, the prejudice he faced, and the resilience it took to rise above. His speeches inspired countless entrepreneurs, particularly those from marginalized backgrounds. Marcus became a mentor to aspiring business owners, offering guidance on navigating challenges and building sustainable enterprises. He partnered with organizations dedicated to empowering underrepresented communities, funding scholarships for agricultural and aviation students, and providing grants to small businesses. Marcus also launched an initiative called Roots to Wings, a program aimed at bridging the gap between agriculture and aviation. The initiative provided opportunities for Black farmers to access new markets through global trade, supported by the logistical advantages of aviation. By connecting two industries often perceived as unrelated, Marcus created a pipeline for innovation and growth. Through his efforts, Marcus proved that success was not just about personal achievement but about creating a ripple effect that empowered others. He showed the world that resilience, innovation, and compassion could redefine what it meant to be a leader. Closing reflection. On a crisp, clear morning, Marcus stood on the tarmac, looking up at the Gulfstream G700 that had become a symbol of his journey. The jet gleamed in the sunlight, a testament to the heights he had reached. As he prepared to board, Marcus took a moment to reflect. He thought of the fields where he had worked as a boy, the calloused hands of his father, and the sacrifices his family had made to hold on to their land. He thought of the barriers he had faced, from discriminatory policies to the subtle prejudices that had followed him into adulthood. And he thought of the countless people who had supported him along the way, from mentors to community members who believed in his vision. Marcus smiled, a deep sense of pride and gratitude filling his chest. His journey had been anything but easy, but every struggle had shaped him into the man he was today, a global entrepreneur, a changemaker, and an advocate for equity and inclusion. As he stepped onto the jet, Marcus knew this was just the beginning. The sky was no longer the limit, it was the launching pad for even greater possibilities. He had proven that adversity could be overcome, that stereotypes could be shattered, and that dignity and perseverance could open doors once thought inaccessible. The Gulfstream's engines roared to life, and as the jet ascended into the sky, Marcus gazed out of the window, the horizon stretching endlessly before him. His journey was a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of respect, and the boundless potential of a dream pursued with unwavering determination. The story of Marcus Thompson was not just one of personal triumph but a legacy of change, one that would inspire generations to come.